Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel, Rachel Reads. Today I'm going to be just reviewing all of the books that I read in January of 2021. So let's just get started. I think I'm going to just do these in order of how I read them. The first book that I read in January of 2021 was Shit Actually by Lindy West, and I read this as an audiobook. I bought the book on Libro FM on my phone, and it was hilarious. I'd already read Shrill by Lindy West a couple of years ago, and I loved it. And now I want to just make sure I read everything else by her because Shit Actually was super funny. It's a book of essays that she just reviews different movies just through a comedic lens, and it's really, honestly, I laughed so much reading this. I would just have to stop what I was doing and just start laughing. It was so funny. The second book that I read in January was Keeper of the Lost Cities Unlocked. This is the book 8.5 in this series, Keeper of the Lost Cities by Shannon Messenger. And I really liked this book, even though it didn't have a full story. It was it has it's sort of a guide to the world plus a novella at the end, but it has secret documents, different there are even pictures of the characters that are really fun and beautiful, and it was just a really fun read. I love this series so much, and I can't wait for the 9th book, which we don't even have a title for, and it's supposed to come out later this year. So here's hoping. So yeah, that was the second book. The third book that I read in January of 2021 was Outlawed by Anna North. I got this from Book of the Month, and this is True Grit meets Handmaid's Tale, and it's sort of an alternate history, dystopian kind of thing. It takes place in the 1800s in the United States, and everyone kind of follows this sort of a new age type of religion. It's based a lot on Christianity and other monotheistic religions, and it basically worships childbearing women and babies. And what happens is if you are having a hard time conceiving or aren't able to give birth to healthy babies, you are deemed a witch and your life is at stake. They hang witches, quote, witches, all the time. So in this book, the main character is Ada, and she is having a hard time conceiving and decides to run away and join a band of outlaws. Sorry, my cat just ran down the stairs really fast, so it distracted me. So she joins this band of outlaws that turn out to be all women who are, and there are queer women and trans women, and they are trying to make their own way in the world because they've all in some way been in trouble for being accused of witchcraft. And so this is one of my favorite books that I read this month. It definitely is in the running for my top 10 of the year, and which is saying a lot because I'm only a month into the year. So the fourth book that I read this month was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and the reason you can't see the cover is I read it on my Kindle. That's why I'm holding that up. And I really enjoyed this one. It was definitely a sliding doors-esque type of story. The main character, trigger warnings for suicidal ideation, but she decides she wants to end her life, and in that process she finds herself in this sort of in-between world called the Midnight Library, and it is full of all of these books that tell the story of her life based on if she had made different decisions. So there are endless books in this library based on, if she went back and said, oh, I wish that I had never, broke up with this person. There is a version of her life that follows that, timeline if she had never done that. So she gets to try out all these different versions of her life, and it is really interesting. So that was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I did enjoy that one. The fifth book that I read this month was by Shelby Mahurin, Serpent and Dove, and I listened to it on audiobook. I got it from my library, and it was pretty good. It wasn't my favorite. It's about a witch and a witch hunter who fall in love. They have to get married, and they hate each other, but then throughout the story they fall in love. So it's an enemies to lovers type thing. To me, you know, I didn't really feel like the relationship was that earned throughout the book. I felt like, you know, I just didn't really buy it. But, you know, it's a fantasy, so it's pretty good. You know, it wasn't horrible. I don't think I'll read the sequel, but yeah, so that was Serpent and Dove. I think I gave it like 3 stars, 2.5, 3 stars. Pretty good, but not my favorite. The next book that I read was another book that I read on my Kindle, was For Real by Allison Cherry, and this one was so funny. It is based on like reality TV. So the main characters are 2 sisters who, you know, they're a few years apart in age, and they're sort of opposites. They're not a whole, you know, they don't have a whole lot in common, but they love each other. And the older sister finds out her boyfriend is cheating on her, and so the younger sister helps her enact revenge. And the revenge is to sign up for this reality show that's sort of kind of like The Amazing Race, because the ex-boyfriend is going on the show, and their main goal is to just make sure that he doesn't win, because they don't want him to win, you know, the prize money and the fame and all of that. So it's just about their adventures. There's a lot of fun travel in it. There's some really interesting characters. So that is For Real by Allison Cherry, and I did enjoy that one a lot. All right, the next book that I read was Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade, and I listened to this one on audiobook on Scribd, actually, and I thought it was very fun. It was very sexy. It was a fun, you know, romance, really good, fat positive main character, and, you know, the love interest was a really nice character, and I just thought it was a cute story. It's about cosplays and fan fiction, and who doesn't love that, right? So that was Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade, and I did really like that one a lot. The next book that I read was Sex and Vanity by Kevin Kwan. This book was so good. It was recommended to me by my friend Becky. Hi, Becky. And I did read Crazy Rich Asians by this author, which I loved that book. So good. And I think I love this one just as much. It definitely, you know, checked all the boxes of funny, satirical, a lot of interesting characters. I was rooting for the main character, and yeah, I really liked it. So maybe they'll make this one into a movie too, but I will just be happy with more books. Okay, the next one that I read, which definitely another one that's you know, in the running for top 10, is A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the 3rd book in the Cursebreakers series, and it was so good. I read this, I actually was lucky enough to get an ARC from the publisher, but I had pre-ordered this anyway, so, but we interviewed Bridget Kemmerer for our podcast, which I'll have to, I'll link it below, but please go and listen to that episode because it was so good. She is the nicest person, and it was a really fun interview. So yeah, I definitely loved A Vow So Bold and Deadly. I loved how, you know, the story, you know, where the story went, and it just, this series is amazing. If you haven't read it, please read it. This next book that I read was probably my #1 for the entire month, and that was Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. I think I read this in less than 24 hours, and that includes like going to work, because I just could not put it down. It was so good. And so this is like a prequel to The Hate U Give, which if you haven't read that, read it. Read all of her books. Angie Thomas is just so talented. And this book is from Maverick's point of view. Maverick is the father of Star, who is the main character in The Hate U Give. And it just goes through him, you know, becoming a teen dad and discovering, you know, things about himself he didn't realize, and trying to, you know, improve his life. And oh, it just, and you know, you get his relationship with his mom and with his dad. I cried so much reading this book. I got dehydrated for sure. It's incredible. I will definitely reread this because I just loved it so much. I can't even describe how much I loved it. So you're just going to have to take my word for it and read it. Another book that I read this month was Barack Obama's book. So his most recent published book, A Promised Land, which is volume 1 of 2 volumes that are about his presidency. So this was about mostly, his, early political career, his campaign, and then the first few years of his presidency. And it was really good. I bought this, but then I also bought it on Libro FM. So mostly I listened to it, and then I looked at the pictures because the pictures are really nice. Like, look at all his family photos and everything. So, it was really enjoyable, very interesting, a lot of fun behind the scenes information, and so A Promised Land by Barack Obama. The next book that I read it on audiobook on Scribd, and it's This Is My America by Kim Johnson. And this book was, it's a YA contemporary, and, it's about this girl who, her father's on death row, and, she knows he's innocent, so he's trying to get his case taken on by the Innocence X Project. And so it's sort of, and then in the meantime, like, her brother gets into some trouble and she's trying to help him with that as well. So it's very interesting, pretty, there were some parts that were like thrilling, but it wasn't a thriller. It was just intense. The story was really good. I gave that one 5 stars as well. It was amazing. The next book that I read was The Removed by Brandon Hobson. This was another book of the month pick. This book is about a Cherokee family and sort of them trying to come to terms with, their son being killed very young by a police officer. And, I think it's like 10 years later, and they're all going through their own things. The mom and dad are dealing with the dad's Alzheimer's. They take in this foster kid that just like changes their lives and brings them so much joy. And then one of their remaining son, he is having trouble battling addiction, and then his story turns into this like Stephen King style, alternate universe type thing where he's in this land that's like between the living and the dead, and a bunch of creepy things happen there. And then the daughter she's dealing with her own thing, trying to come to terms with her grief. And you sort of find out a lot about her at the end, that you think her story was going one way, but it was actually something totally different, which is really interesting. So I really enjoyed this. Another great read. Finally, the last book that I read in January was Silver Sparrow by Tayari Jones, and I also read this one on my Kindle, and oh my gosh, it was so good. We read it for our book club episode for the podcast. Again, the podcast is linked below. Please go check it out. And we had, a friend, Dr. Shanae Phillips, come on and discuss it with us because it's one of her favorite books. But it is about 2 girls. It's sort of dual narrative. The first half of the book is one girl who, her mom is married to this man who is actually a bigamist. So he has 2 wives and 2 daughters. But the girl in the first half of the book is the secret daughter, the secret family. And so you get her perspective growing up like that, and then it moves to the other daughter's perspective, the one who is visible, the one that, he claims in public. So it was really interesting to get both their perspectives, and I just thought it was such a good book, and oh my gosh, 5 stars, of course. But I think that's everything I read. I read 14 books in January, which is a lot. Okay, so tell me what you read in January, and, if you've read any of the books I read, what did you think of them? And if you, want to pick up any of the books that I've read, just let me know. Comment down below, and also comment what kind of videos you all want to see on my channel. I definitely want to make videos that both are enjoyable for me to make, but also are enjoyable for you to watch. So let me know what you think, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.